Hi, in this series, we'll build an application with charts, fundamental analysis, and support and resistance levels. You'll learn how to create workflows, fetch and process data using workers, build new widgets, and implement them in a dashboard. This series is designed for beginners, so no prior experience with a PUD flow is required. By the end of this series, you'll have a solid understanding of how to use a PUD flow to create your own stock market analysis tools. So we can get started. For beginning, we will build a new workflow. What is workflow? Workflow is a sequence of steps that define how data is processed and transformed within the PUD flow platform. Workflows allow you to automate tasks, integrate data sources, and create complex analyses without writing code. Okay, here is your place to prepare your first workflow. On the left side, you have workers. Workers are modular components that perform specific tasks within a workflow. They can fetch data from external sources, process and analyze data, generate visualizations, and more. You can drag and drop workers onto the canvas to build your workflow. Here is a search bar where you can find over 400 workers, but every day we deploy new workers. So you can always find new tools to help you with your analysis. In this series, I will try to describe main workers and how to use them. If you have an idea for new workers, please let us know. Okay, let's start to build. First, you need to define a trigger. A trigger is an event that starts the workflow. It can be a scheduled time, a user action, or an external event. For this series, we will use a time-based trigger to run our workflow every day at a specific time. Here we set 10 seconds. It means that every 10 seconds the trigger will start our workflow. When you click on a worker, you can see the worker details. Here you can configure the worker settings, such as the schedule, input parameters, and output options. You can also see a description of what the worker does and how to use it. On the left side, you have data from other workers that you can use as input for this worker. On the right side, you have output data from this worker. Here you will see data that was calculated from this worker. Of course, there will be a lot of canvas, some list, table, charts. Output allows you to understand how it's calculated every step, and you can check every step in your workflow. It works well or whether its data is correct. Okay, when we have set up the trigger, in the next step we use the Yahoo Finance worker. We need data to display in the chart, so we need a source of data. For this example, we use Yahoo Finance data. And here you have a field with autocomplete, where you can quickly find the index you need. Here you have more than 300,000 indexes. Okay, we've found the gold. Now we set up the data, start date and end date. Here you have a button that helps you choose the date more easily. This means you can define the date range, for example, by selecting a specific start and end date using a regular expression or evaluating a value like the last 30 days. Evaluation is a major feature in a PUD flow, and I'll describe it in more detail in another video. Next, you need to choose the interval of data and the type of data you're looking for. In our example, it's need prices. Now you have two buttons, Run and Run All. The difference between Run and Run All is that when you click Run, you run only this worker with data from previous workers. When you click Run All, you run all workers from the beginning to the end. So if you have a long workflow with many workers and you want to test only one worker, you can use Run. If you want to test the entire workflow, you can use Run All. If you want to quickly check if everything works correctly, you click Run because it's much faster. Okay, now it's the end of this step. We need a widget to show the data chart. To display the data, we use a candlestick chart because it represents price data. And now look how easy it is. On the left side, you have data from the previous worker. You just need to drag and drop one of the data items into this worker's input. This tells the worker which data you want to display on the chart. In our example, we're using data from Yahoo Finance. We drag and drop it into the input, and the next step is to join the data with the candlestick component. This step is important because sometimes the data isn't regular and contains many columns. That's why we need a precise join. We have to specify which column should be joined with the candlestick. Finally, click Run. Look, here's the first widget, our first chart. Congratulations! Now you can clearly see what I mentioned before. On the left side, you have data from the previous workers. In the middle, you have the setup for this worker. And on the right side, you can see the output, where you can check that everything works and is calculated correctly. Okay, we have the first workflow. On the top right side, you also have the preview widgets. When you click them, you can see in real time how your widgets display the data. That's all for this video. We've built our first workflow, and in the next video, we'll show how to display this widget on the dashboard. Thank you very much for your attention, and I invite you to watch the next video.